What's up, ladies, gentlemen, guys, and gals? This is Ladash coming at you. So, the Pokemon 2017 Nationals Finals was actually pretty exciting. As far as the Pokemon that showed up, there was some interesting stuff. Some stuff I expected. Overall, it didn't surprise me too much, but still, the skill level that was shown at this competition between what was it, Paul Chua and Christopher Kahn was exciting. Well, first before I go on, big round of applause to all of those that made it up to the top eight within the nationals competition. Believe their names were outside of Christopher and Paul. They were Sean, Caesar, Nick, Nils, Marcus, and Sebastian. So, big shout out to them as well for definitely making it that far. But going back to the actual finals, those matches were really hype. First game, it was pretty legit. Well, first let me get the team layout. So Paul on his end, he had, what was it? Let's see, I got it written down here. Garchomp, Alolan Ninetales, Arcanine, Tapu Koko, Celesteela, and Snorlax. While Christopher had Garchomp, Gyarados, Arcanine, Tapu Koko, Porygon 2, and Snorlax. Their teams basically somewhat mirrored each other. They both had Garchomp, Arcanine, Snorlax. Porygon 2 was basically the immense bulk on Christopher's side, while Celesteela was the immense bulk on Paul's team, and then you have the one standout, like Gyarados on Christopher's side, Alolan Ninetales on Paul's. Now, throughout the course of these matches, they both respectively didn't use certain Pokemon on Christopher's end, he never used Gyarados. So, and I mean, with good due reason, he didn't know whether or not Paul was gonna bring out that freeze dry on Gyarados. And for those of you that don't know, freeze dry is an ice type move that counts as super effective towards water types. Whereas normal ice type moves, they don't do any. They're ineffective to water types. So this is a huge thing especially for Gyarados to be taking the 4 times the type advantage damage from freeze dry. And on top of that, he has Tapu Koko over there. So that's 2 very high dangers that Paul was likely going to have out there. So it wouldn't have made sense to bring out Gyarados. So that was smart on Christopher's play. On Paul's end, he never used, what was it, his own Arcanine nor Celesteela. Celesteela, yes, it was definitely threatened. It would have been definitely threatened by both Arcanine and Tapu Koko on Christopher's side. They, Arcanine with the Flare Blitz, and of course Tapu Koko with not only just a standard Thunderbolt, but Gigavolt Havoc at that. He's already confirmed from previous matches that that Christopher's Tapu Koko does in fact hold the Electrium Z to basically pull that move off. So definitely didn't want to endanger his Celesteela, or basically be crippled with his Celesteela. So it was smart to keep that one out. I'm not sure about his decision leaving Arcanine out in some of the future games. I'll touch more on that later. But he did not use Arcanine, and I could see a little bit of a reason, but it ultimately did not make sense for him to not mix it up in the rounds to come. But anyway, so Paul, throughout all of the games, he used Garchomp, Alolan Ninetales, Tapu Koko, and Snorlax. So in the first game, I forget what all Christopher had. I think he had I believe, yes, he had Tapu Koko out there. I know he had his Snorlax, Porygon 2, and I believe Arcanine in that round. Arcanine was putting in a lot of work through those rounds, getting the intimidates off and going ahead and making sure that the Snorlax on Paul's end was not getting those curses in, because he was definitely trying to beef up with them curses, getting the attack boost and the defense boost, and And what ultimately was really big deal was the fact that Christopher's Arcanine had Toxic on top of that. So he toxic Snorlax or Paul Snorlax, and that was a huge thing because Toxic doesn't just poison your enemy; it gradually does more damage as the turns go by. So it basically put Paul Snorlax on a timer, and uh, like I said, game 1 things played out, and ultimately Paul ended up losing to Christopher game 1. Of course the toxic damage on top of the onslaught brought on by the by Paul's I mean by Christopher's actually yes I mistakenly said Christopher had Snorlax game 1. I don't think he had his own Snorlax game 1. He had Garchomp in place there. So yeah, he brought on the onslaught with his own Arcanine and Tapu Koko and wrapped up that game. Now game 2 and 3. Now there's the things got interesting with those games. Game 3, Paul switched up his strategy, and uh, I feel like he should have went with Aurora Veil in the very first turn. He went ahead and went with a Blizzard to get some damage in, and then got a Curse on his Snorlax and got the attack and defense boost. Now, right then and there, what was it? Christopher? I cannot remember what he started with, but he did end up switching out, I believe, his Arcanine for Tapu Koko, I believe. I can't remember what the switch out was, but the second turn was where things really started going. Just really started rolling because the Lola Ninetales got the Aurora Veil in, and Snorlax went ahead and just got started. Okay, I don't think the Arcanine was switched. I think it was switched in at this time, so it got the Intimidate in. But it also, that second turn, it got a Toxic on the Snorlax. Now this was a huge deal on top of that because this Snorlax that second turn got another curse in, and basically was at plus 2 attack, plus 2 defense, with only that one intimidate, so it was at +1 attack. But the toxic allowed it to basically have full power of facade attack. Snorlax had the normal attack facade, which is at about 60 base damage, I believe. So when Snorlax is inflicted with a status ailment, it basically doubles its attack power. So Facade basically was doing 120 base attack damage, along with that +1 attack boost and the already significant attack that Snorlax has in his stat pool, and the stab damage increase. This Snorlax was definitely going in with his power. It was just slapping things around, and that ultimately is what was giving Paul the upper hand in this match. The second thing that gave him the huge advantage was the fact that Alolan Ninetales got a freeze off on the Porygon 2. That was huge, and because Porygon 2 literally couldn't do anything for 3 turns. All 3 turns that it was out there, all it kept doing was either taking damage or just being stalled there. It eventually just got knocked out of the way, and that it pretty much sealed the game for Paul at that point, because he had already knocked out another Pokemon, and actually no, knocked out 2 Pokemon. Then Porygon went out, and I believe it was just Tapu Koko on Christopher's end that was left out there. So that was an exciting exciting turnaround, if you will. And then we get hyped up going to game 3. Of course, it's always hyped up going into a game 3 for the finals of a competition. So here we have the most exciting match of the exciting round of the entire match. We have Christopher going in with his Arcanine, Tapu Koko, Porygon 2, and Snorlax. I believe he started off with Arcanine and Porygon 2. While Paul went in, of course, again with Garchomp, Alolan Ninetales, Tapu Koko, and Snorlax. He started off with the Snorlax and I want to say Tapu Koko. Yes, I believe he started off with his Tapu Koko and Snorlax. Yep, because the way he started off, he immediately went on with a Gigavolt Havoc, using his Z Crystal and targeted the Arcanine, I believe. Arcanine switched out and went into Christopher's Tapu Koko, and man, let me. That Gigavolt Havoc did so much damage that even though Christopher's Tapu Koko, is an electric type and it's resistant to electric moves, it only survived literally about 1 HP of one HP overall from that attack. So it was very close to just being. It almost got KO at just that one Gigavolt Havoc. So the really great save for Christopher's end, but still a lot of damage. That Tapu Koko was going to be out next round more than likely. So on top of that, Paul's Snorlax was going ahead getting the curses in. Christopher going ahead and trying to revamp everything. Next turn, everything just went crazy. Tapu Koko went on Christopher's end, went out. His Porygon 2 went out in 2 turns. The Arcanine came in with only 1 Intimidate off on the Snorlax, but after that turn, he literally was left with just 2 Pokemon left, and which was his own Snorlax and of course his Arcanine. His Arcanine in that same turn also got a Toxic off on the Snorlax, or on Paul's Snorlax. So Paul's Snorlax was on a timer, but he was looking very favorable, having a Toxic off on him and already a curse. A +1 boost to his attack, because he ended up getting 2 curses in this early part of this match. So it was really looking up on Paul's end until, well, let me just put it this way: Christopher, he really hung in there. His Snorlax, of course, had a Figgy Berry on it, so when it dropped to the yellow portion of his health bar, he got a 50% HP boost with it. But his Snorlax also has Recycle, which allowed him to recycle that berry whenever he uses the move, and he could basically use the effects of that berry again. So on top of that, his Arcanine was getting the Toxics off on whatever Paul had remaining on the field. That the Toxic and the Recycle, that was keeping Christopher in the game. Let me tell you, the Toxic was putting in work. Snorlax was not going down, even though he had gotten, what was it? He got paralyzed due to the Tapu Koko, and Paul's Garchomp was doing rock slides constantly, and this Snorlax was bypassing. He was bypassing everything. He was bypassing the flinch. He was bypassing the paralyzed stall, and he was getting them recycles in. And you could tell Paul was trying his hardest to get that thing out of here. He knew that thing was just going to stall all day, and that he was on a timer with that Toxic. But to no avail, that Snorlax was not going down. And on top of that, the Arcanine was just chipping away with damage, picking up more and more damage on Paul's side. Arcanine eventually went down, but it left its mark. It put in a lot of work, and all you had left on Paul's end was a Garchomp and a Alolan Ninetales. The Garchomp was already under the toxic effect, and Alolan Ninetales, it was nowhere near doing enough damage to really deal with Snorlax alone. So really and Paul's Garchomp was holding a choice scarf, so it was locked into that rock slide. So he really needed to get a flinch off or a paralysis thought on that Snorlax to really get the upper hand, or else it was just going to recycle and time out the toxic effect on Garchomp. Well, guess what happened? That Snorlax still bypassing everything. He timed out the Garchomp. Garchomp is offed by the toxic and the hail damage that was coming in. Alolan Ninetales could not do enough damage to beat out the Snorlax. So the next turn after the Garchomp was out the way, it just facaded that Alolan Ninetales out of here, and it was just game. That was exciting, and what also made this even more exciting of a match was the fact that Australia, the competitors from the senior and juniors division of the Pokemon Nationals competition, they were their winners were from Australia as well. And in the seniors division, that was actually Christopher Khan's little brother who won. So not only did Australia win the entirety of this nationals, seniors and masters division was done on a family deal. So you got Christopher and his little brother basically took care of nationals. This was so yes, this was a huge thing going on here, especially in Australians' favor. So it was just an exciting thing to see. I can't wait to see how they do at Worlds, and yeah. So definitely the MVPs on either the opponent's teams is what was Snorlax, Arcanine, and Tapu Koko. They put in all the most amount of work. They had the most amount of significance in these battles that these competitors were going through. And if I had to say the top Pokemon, it had to be between Snorlax and Arcanine. I really can't debate between the two. Arcanine put in all the work of support. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna give it to Arcanine. Arcanine really was the pivot in all of this. It kept, whether it was on, well, it didn't really make much of an appearance on Paul's side. So for Christopher's side, it really made the difference as far as getting those intimidates in, making sure things were controlled that way, making sure that it was getting the residual damage from toxic, or putting things on the timers, and still picking up heavy damage with his flare blitz. And not only that, it put pressure for a Alolan Ninetales on top of that. So Arcanine really was MVP for Christopher's side. Without it, he probably wouldn't have had he probably would have had a hard time, and actually I think he would have really definitely lost this match. So definitely clapping it up to Arcanine on that one. Snorlax on Christopher's side, the way Christopher played it was definitely well done, and especially it hanging on in there with the recycle and bypassing two chances of just losing an entire turn. So it was something to see. Anyway, I put the link in the description below to see the match. You can see it for yourself. Let me know in the comment section how you felt about the match. If you're a fan of VGC and what you're expecting for Worlds. If you like the video, go ahead and leave a like, and I will see you guys later.